All right, guys, how you guys doing? Hope everybody's doing good and safe and staying quarantined, etc. I'm going to be posting up the lecture on satire, parody, and propaganda in art and rhetoric. Excuse me. So I hope you guys have at least started looking at some of the pieces of work you want to do for your project. A couple of the art pieces, at least before we start kind of talking about satire, propaganda, and the way that Banksy might use this in his artwork. So let's go ahead and get to it and just start the PowerPoint, which I'll be including in the video lecture. If you guys have any questions, again, just feel free to email me or send me a comment on the blogger. So let me turn the camera around. Okay, so again, the lecture will be pretty much dedicated to talking about satire, parody, and propaganda, and the way that Banksy kind of uses this in his artwork. Before we kind of begin talking about how he uses them, we should just kind of discuss the terms definitions. So we'll start with satire, and pretty much satire is the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the content of contemporary politics and other topical issues. Satire is something that has, ever since ads or, people started posting ads on newspapers or on public displays, any kind of public displays. Especially, I think where you'll find a lot of satire, especially is in like, I know this is sort of kind of outdated, but like newspapers and stuff like that, they'll have like the cartoon section, which is full of satirical kind of stuff that's related to like the cultural, socio politics of the time. And again, if you happen to have just like a regular newspaper around, you might find those like in the end or the cartoon section. So here we have an example. It's if you go online and look for satire and examples, you're gonna get a bunch of stuff. But pretty much, I just kind of need for you guys to understand the basic concept of satire. Again, we use satire in a way to kind of poke fun or to poke humor at some kind of serious topics sometimes. So in order for us to make it a little bit more light, kind of hearted, the use of humor, irony, and kind of over exaggeration is used. What do we call that? An over exaggeration. I can't think of the term right now. Hyperbole, right? So here we have an example on the evolution of music, and again, I just kind of got some like right off the internet. I didn't really spend too much time kind of looking for these things. But here we have the evolution of music and of alternative music. And if you know, I guess this kind of struck a chord with me because I'm from the 90s. So you have Nirvana, you have Bush, Nickelback, and Puddle of Mud. Well, if you're familiar with at least Nirvana, some of these other bands, kind of their contemporaries, include bands like Bush, Nickelback, and Puddle of Mud. And pretty much this drawing or this cartoon is sort of symbolic as to sort of the kind of the I guess like how music has downgraded over the years, especially like alternative music with the names of specifically with the names of bands and stuff like that and sort of what they represent. So again, it's supposed to be poking humor at that kind of concept pretty much. Also, this drawing might also be familiar with regards to like the evolution of man, right? Where the evolution of man, we sort of begin kind of, it's sort of an upward kind of, I guess like tilt and stuff. And here we have the opposite with the evolution of music, right? All right, so let's move on to the next term here, real quick. And again, these satire can be political. It can be again related to socio-economic, socio-cultural kind of just topics and things of that nature. This particular drawing over here on the right hand side, you might be familiar with it if you're a particular fan of a particular movie. Milk, I am your father, and then we have a little gallon of milk on the right hand side that says no. So again, this is an allusion to Star Wars. Here, if you're familiar, Luke, I am your father. So again, in a way, it's satiric. This might be some sort of cartoon that's geared toward, I don't know, selling milk or something like that. Again, these are just kind of little examples that I found online and things like that. On this side, you'll have another drawing that's a little I guess it's a little more detailed, and I guess it requires a little bit more critical thinking on behalf of you guys. So pretty much we have what looks like the Statue of Liberty on the back, but it's really not. And then we have on the scales, we have a man in business attire, and then we have a woman sort of kind of on the brink of sort of falling off the scale. But if you notice that on the scale, on her particular scale, that there's a bunch of kind of domestic products and stuff like that. You have a pan, you have a broom, you have bottles and stuff like that. So again, all of these things are kind of leads us to believe of sort of this kind of domestication life, right? But again, we're not talking about, again, the figure on the back. Whenever we're looking at, remember when we were talking about White and Billings and sort of the particular relationship that a visual work represents is something that they call, or what we should be looking at is sort of the exterior and the interior. So whenever we're looking at this image, we should be focusing on the images that are being presented to us sort of as the exterior kind of mode of looking at a visual work of art or a cartoon or an ad or whatever, propaganda. We're looking at the images that are presented to us. We're looking at color. We're looking at just anything that will give us like a type of clue as to what the artist might be kind of representing or trying to illustrate for us. So again, here we have both male, female on a scale. So again, the scale alone should kind of give some sort of a vibe off to you as far as, we generally use scales to measure things. We generally use a type of scale like this too. And again, I think we have to really look at the picture that's behind to kind of have a more idea of what exactly is going on here. A lot of people tell me it looks like the Statue of Liberty and stuff like that, but kind of the tell signs here, or kind of the hints that the artist is trying to give off is, first of all, she has a blindfold on, right? It's a woman carrying a sword. She has a blindfold on, and she has a scale. So, the whole kind of Statue of Liberty thing is kind of it doesn't work for this. It's not the Statue of Liberty, even though the robe kind of gives us that impression. But this is a type of figure that you would probably see like in a courtroom. If you guys are familiar with, I think this is the Libra or something like that. This is supposed to be a representation of this kind of the value system that justice is blind, and that justice should, everything, the scales obviously are meant to symbolize equality. And if you look at the scales, though, it's really not, the scales are not tipping anywhere. So again, that should be a call to attention to sort of signify something. Even though on the right-hand side, we see that the woman is struggling to kind of, to even get to be even on the scale. Whereas the left-hand side of the scale, where you have the man, he's sort of kind of just standing there and stuff. Now, the other thing is, again, by now you probably have your own kind of representation or kind of theory as far as to what the drawing stands for. So again, some of the things might be the inequality of men and women, but I think it goes further than that. If you look at the man's attire and the woman's attire, they're sort of dressed in business, kind of business clothing. The guy's holding on a briefcase, and the woman looks fairly kind of dressed professional and stuff, except for her kind of, again, kind of dangling from the scale and stuff. Excuse me. So this might also be a representation because of that business attire of a gender pay gap, where oftentimes we see CEOs of companies being all male and not correctly representing an equal inequality amongst the way people, or both male and females, get paid, especially in business companies and things like that. So again, it's satire. It's a call to attention by kind of, again, poking humor or kind of ridiculing or poking at particular vices. The fact that we have a woman that does more on the home front, and even at that has to again compete at the work level, and this sort of inequality that happens is something that, again, the artist might be aiming at kind of representing in that particular picture. All right. So again, in that sense, it's satire. Parody, an imitation of style of a particular writer, artist, or genre with a deliberate exaggeration for comic effect. So parody and satire kind of work, kind of similarly. Now, parody in some way is a little bit different because parody exists in a lot of the kind of entertainment that we watch as individuals. Shows like Saturday Night Live are parody. You can consider to be parody because they're always parodying like the presidents of the United States, and they've been doing this since this show really initially started. And again, poking also humor at contemporary individuals in society or famous people and stuff like that. So think of Saturday Night Live as an example of parody. But if you're more familiar with more contemporary shows like Key and Peele, they're also doing a lot of parody, which their parody is sort of aimed at kind of looking at the way race kind of works, especially black culture or African American culture and white culture and kind of everything in between, pretty much. Chappelle's Show was one of the other shows that kind of did that earlier on. But here we have some examples of parody, some kind of just things that I got off from the internet as well. So again, it's an imitation of something, right? They're supposed to be mimicking or imitating something, but they're, again, trying to kind of poke humor or kind of over exaggerate something in order to say something about whatever it is that they're kind of looking at. So fake book, we here we have the iconic Facebook logo, and everybody kind of knows Facebook and knows the logo, but again, we notice that it says fake book. So this might make you think about or kind of realize, well, what is Facebook? Initially, it started off as just a platform where you had a bunch of pictures and things like that, and now it's transformed into something, kind of this sort of monster that that everybody's on and that we sort of go to get all kinds of information. In other words, it's just become something that in its advent was was really nothing like or similar like to what it began. And again, it should also maybe kind of, there should be something to say as far as like what the kind of artist is saying, is that maybe the stuff that you find in Facebook, even pictures or the news, is fake. So again, in a sense, that's they're trying to, that's satiric, but also in a sense, it's using the iconic figure of Facebook in order to make a parody. This one is a little funny. I mean, if you know, a bunch of you guys probably recognize the caricature there, right? The minion. Um, but if you have ever seen Game of Thrones and stuff like that, it's sort of a play on Game of Thrones and the minions. Um, if you're familiar with Game of Thrones and Game of Thrones, the kind of the main purpose of the characters or kind of is to see who can occupy the Iron Throne and stuff like that. And the minions, they're sort of mischievous kind of little things that are always getting into trouble, but in a sense, it's a play on both of them to say something about control and to say something about power relations. Somehow or another, I get the way it works with Game of Thrones, but since I'm not very familiar with the minions, you might, maybe one of you guys can answer that for me in class one day. So on the right hand side, we have again, if you're if you're a fan of a particular kind of film, you'll know what that is. There we have like a stormtrooper from Star Wars, and if you recognize the background, it's the background of Starbucks, right? May the froth be with you. So again, it's a play on a couple of it's a play on a film there, and a play on a socio-cultural kind of iconic business advertisement and stuff, um, uh, to kind of combine them for a kind of a comedic effect or sort of propaganda, which we'll talk about in a bit. Propaganda, I think, is one of those terms that we should be aware of, because everything that you see, um, everything that you see on TV, every kind of ad that you're privy to whenever you watch TV is a type of propaganda that's trying to sell something to you, that's trying for you to kind of click on, or trying for you to accept as kind of a truth value. So propaganda is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view, the particular doctrines or principles propagated by an organization or a movement. So again, a lot of the propaganda has existed since we were able to put advertisements again on newspapers or billboards and stuff like that. We have to really be careful with propaganda these days, because a lot of the times, especially living in an age where a lot of us kind of depend on social media in order for us to get our news. We have to really question where we get our news, where the legitimacy of our news, the accuracy of our news, who's behind, if it's experts kind of telling the news, or that are able to give us information on things like science, and again, the expertise kind of wherever it is that this information is coming from. The early propaganda that existed in the United States, you might be familiar with the "I want you" for the U.S. Army. That's Uncle Sam. Um, during that time period, this type of propaganda was used in order for people to enlist, or young men to enlist into the army. It was very popular for that was a very popular kind of iconic um, piece of art that illustrated this kind of this sensibility um, of sort of fighting for being patriotic, fighting for your country, this sort of nationalistic effect where whenever people saw this, especially young men, it was a call to arms sort of to them as well. On the left hand side, it looks like another type of propaganda that appears to be Joseph Stalin, maybe. And again, the type of propaganda that existed in the late Soviet Union, where they were sort of trying to do the same thing. Your country needs you. So again, this propaganda existed in order for them to call attention, to call to arms for young men to enlist in the service. the Obama Hope, again, another iconic sort of. If you look at the color palette, that particular color palette became very iconic. And during a time period, you could actually they actually had an app or something that you could go into and upload your picture, and it would create that effect, which is symbolic toward the Obama administration, and during the time that he was going or running on that hope message and reelection. So again, that in itself, the image, the colors and stuff again became sort of representative of his social movement during that time period. On the right hand side, on the upper right hand side, we have Rosie the Riveter. And I think this was maybe World War II, when young men were all fighting the war. There there was in in the home front, they didn't have enough people kind of working, and since all the men were gone fighting the war, there this type of propaganda was used in order for women to sort of join the working class and help during World War II. This also became sort of an iconic piece of art, because throughout the years it's sort of changed kind of the message. Again, during that time, it was sort of again propaganda used in order for women to join the working front. But what ended up happening is, once the war was over, the men came back. They sort of said, "Okay, we're done. We don't need you anymore. You guys can go back to your domestic lives and stuff like that." And since then, it's sort of again become something of an iconic image used in the feminist movement, most kind of in contemporary terms, but sort of also an image that is used to empower women. And you'll oftentimes also see Rosie the Riveter kind of appear during Halloween and stuff like that. And it's sort of again an empowerment, an image that is supposed to evoke empowerment toward women, equality, and things of that nature. All right, let's go ahead and continue. This is the last image that I have here. That again, again, when we're looking at images or artwork, we should be looking at everything. Again, what's in the forefront of the image, what's in the background, the particular color palette that's being used, etc., in order for us to sort of figure out, to try to think, to critically think about what it is that's being shown to us, or what it's trying to evoke, what kind of sensibility, what kind of message it's trying to not only evoke but maybe provoke, right? So here we have some fists, that it looks like kind of some fists in the air. It looks like the color is the fists are black and the background is red. So these two kind of, that palette or that color palette, the red and the black, sort of evoke this sort of revolutionary image, especially if you are familiar with kind of the colors from the communist Russia. The Russian flag it was red and white. Even and again, it was sort of revolutionary, kind of these revolutionary colors that were used during Cesar Chavez's movement. Lupe actually had the same kind of color, which was also symbolic as kind of a revolutionary kind of thing that they were doing with the migrant workers, and sort of calling attention to their civil rights, which again Cesar Chavez was part of. They actually had like an eagle, and they incorporated the white, the black, and the red in their image. That might be something you might want to look up later on, just to kind of have an idea of this. So here we have some fists that are up in the air, and then in the background we have what looks like social media platforms. In the left hand side, we have, I think that's LinkedIn or something. I think that there's Reddit in there. There's Twitter and there's Facebook. And that W right there might be Wikipedia or something like that. So, kind of, if you look at this image, it's sort of trying to maybe symbolize kind of this revolutionary aspect that we're living in social media, in the social media platform, where there is very much power in what you can do now, since you have these all of these outlets in order to kind of voice your opinion. And again, that can be something that that's powerful, but that might be something also that can be dangerous at the same time. So I think if I were to look at this and kind of try to work my Tolman model argument, I guess my main thesis would be, okay, well, this is sort of like a revolutionary message that's symbolic, that's trying to symbolize the amount of power that we have as individuals in social media. All right. And again, I would say that my evidence with regards to this would be the colors that are being used in the artwork: the red, the black, the fists, the background. Again, is sort of also, if you notice, if you guys have ever seen the rising sun kind of image, the flag, there is that kind of aspect that's surrounding this particular image as well. And that's also kind of a symbolic toward revolution and things of that nature. So all of that again is going to be my we have my claim, again, my thesis, and then we have my data, which is the rest, the colors that are being used, the fists, this revolutionary aspect or about it. And then my warrant would be something like, well, again, we have to kind of pay particular attention to the icons as well that are listed in what these social media platforms kind of represent. Um, and you could get really into big detail with regards to this, because even Wikipedia is those one of those sources that anybody can kind of go in and sort of alter the information and change the information. So it sort of requires you to kind of ask, well, what is real, what is not, what is and a lot of people kind of, especially a lot of instructors and professors really don't like when students kind of go through there. So kind of the justification would be, well, it sort of makes us kind of address the question of whether or not, and again, if it, and your claim would have to be something of whether or not you believe this is sort of empowerment, or whether or not you think that this is sort of dangerous, kind of a dangerous sentiment, or this kind of propaganda that's being shown here is sort of dangerous because it's also eliciting the power, or this sort of power that we have, that is also kind of swayed by inaccurate inaccurate news, inaccurate information, and sort of also kind of by people who sort of hide behind the computer in order to say something, or in order to say anything. So again, talk about First Amendment rights. That's something that is very dangerous. Is it okay to say anything so long as you're behind a computer, kind of saying it? It kind of forces you to tackle those issues. And the challenging view or the rebuttal, I think, something that you could use in an image like this would be, again, coming back to the dangers. Is this empowerment really that social media gives us, or is this is something dangerous that sort of, again, kind of, is this something dangerous that any individual can kind of go into these social media platforms and accept them as reality? We already know that Facebook, during the last elections, were hacked, and there was a lot of propaganda, a lot of use of fake videos and things like that that surfaced that the Russians actually were able to go into and infiltrate Facebook and sort of rig the election somehow. So again, if I'm looking at a challenging view or rebuttal or qualifier, something like that, I'm looking at those things. So again, what you're going to be doing on your own is you're going to be looking at the work of Banksy and sort of looking at it just the way I kind of did with this last image, of trying to apply the Tolman model. Whenever you're looking at the image, please make sure that whenever you're looking at the image that you are not just going into some website to find out what the image is about. This requires critical thinking on your own. It requires for you to really look at the images and really focus on the thing that you're looking at. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. This assignment will be submitted through Blackboard. I've already posted the link in order for you to upload that information. I will be posting this PowerPoint along with the video in order for you guys to watch it, rewatch it if you want. But again, feel free to send me a message if you have any questions. Stay safe, guys, and I hope to see you guys. If we don't see each other on Monday, then stay tuned for any upcoming messages. Make sure that you look at the blog. Make sure that you also are getting your emails from your counselor and your local high school so that you're informed as to what's going on with this recent pandemic that we're going through right now. So stay safe again, and I will see you guys soon. Thank you.